Hey there, my name is Anthony Romano, and I'm going to talk about why you should start working out fasted instead of fed all the time. Basically, if you've heard anything about intermittent fasting or low-carb dieting, there's a lot of tips that go hand in hand with those in this video, so don't miss it.
No. There's no way you think fasting, not eating, means you're going to run faster.
That is exactly what that means.
No, it's not.
Why
no.
would they call it fasting if it didn't mean
That's not how it
run?
works.
That's
Where did you hear about this? That's not
sports science.
Oh man, I can't even edit that clip without laughing. Okay, back to the video. Okay, if you're familiar with any of my videos, you know I love ketogenic dieting, I love intermittent fasting, I love prolonged fasting, fitness, bodybuilding training, all that together. And in this video, I'm going to throw some unique tips at you that deal with fasting and training. So a lot of people do this on the internet, but they don't know it as deeply as I do. So I've been doing these things for a long time, keto for 7 years, fasting for probably almost the same time. And here's a couple things right off the bat, okay? So whenever you are training, right, because just so you know, there's a background prerequisite premise you need to know here, which is that the fasted state and the ketogenic state are very similar. So a lot of these phenomena are observable in either one. But basically, anytime you're not eating carbohydrates, you're in the ketogenic state. And if you think about it, if you're not eating anything, you're technically not eating carbohydrates. So it is a much more amplified state of ketosis if you're in the fasted state rather than the fed ketogenic state. So they're both in ketosis. You can look that up. It's a fact. That's the nature of fasting and keto. They're very heavily related. They're the exact same thread. One is just in the deeper side of the pool. Okay? So anytime that you are working out without carbohydrates in your system, right? And this is amplified when you are fasted. What's going to happen is basically there's a couple things. Essentially, off the top of my head right here, your blood sugar is going to be much more stable. Okay? Your blood sugar is going to be much more stable, and you have the ability to train your body to get used to performance despite being at a lower blood sugar concentration, fasted blood sugar. You can get your fasted blood glucose checked very easily with a blood glucometer, but nobody really has to do that. This is objectifiably, scrutinized science that you can check online. So your blood sugar is going to be more stable. The body is able to sustain this, and also you're getting used to this because for a lot of people, if you've ever gassed out in any sort of athletic training, a lot of times from studies nowadays, we've seen that it's actually not due to using up all your energy. There's still plenty of blood glucose left in the muscles as glycogen, but basically the mind taps out because there's a lower concentration of blood sugar. So initially, you're training your body to perform better in any situation where you'll have less blood sugar. So that's very optimal because perhaps you're not able to eat an entire bowl of pasta every day if that's your routine. You're going to train your body to get better at this. But there's a lot better fat burning effects of this as well because your body's more sensitive to the fat burning properties of adrenaline when there's no carbohydrates in your system. So this could mean ketogenic eating for breakfast, or it could just mean skipping breakfast altogether if you decide to eat carbs in your daily routine. So the fat burning properties of epinephrine, adrenaline, are going to be much more potent, okay? And at the same time, you don't have to worry about losing muscle in this way, okay? If you do intermittent fasting, or you know anybody who does, you'll hear that they claim that you won't lose muscle. Now, the reason why you don't lose muscle is because A, you're bordering on the side of ketosis, right? You're getting close to there. Depending on how low carb you diet, or if you diet with carbs, that will depend how close you get. But we know that your blood sugar and blood insulin is going to be more stable once you've hit a certain amount of hours of fasted time. So because of that, essentially the effects on losing muscle and muscle breakdown will be mitigated. But not many people are aware that your body is a lot less likely to break down protein from your muscles if insulin isn't present. So basically, insulin will release to shuttle in nutrients into your muscles, and it's also a response to sugar because it lowers your blood sugar, because if your blood sugar jacks up too high, you could die. and that is essentially the main problem for type 1 diabetics. So as far as this concerns you, when we're talking about skipping carbs in the morning, and so you could either have a protein fat breakfast, or you can have just no breakfast at all and train fasted, the muscle breakdown risk is a lot lower because there's no insulin present in the morning. Okay, I'm using the example of a morning training, right, where you skip breakfast, because that's just the best example for people to understand this. Okay, maybe you ate carbs the night before, but you'd have to have a point where your blood sugar and blood insulin rise and then fall and then they stabilize. Okay, because if you had a large amount of whey protein in the morning, that would be basically creating a large insulin spike, which could then increase the risk of having that catabolic muscle breakdown effect due to the cortisol that naturally comes with waking up. So basically, you can negate that possible muscle breakdown risk if you don't allow insulin to be spiked in the morning and skip breakfast or implement a ketogenic dieting plan, because at that point you're going to be lowering your overall macro levels of insulin on a regular basis. So you're reducing the risk of muscle breakdown, and many people who talk about fasting know this only because of the effects on how it gets you closer to the ketogenic state where it's naturally more protein sparing. But that takes a longer time, and you have to deplete your stored carbs before you can get to ketosis. So even if you're not pursuing ketosis, that's just the mechanism that's going to make you avoid wasting muscle when you're fasting, okay? Because you can fast with carbs, without carbs, whatever you like. But I've been flipping through my notes here for like 10 minutes trying to find the page. I just ranted there. Okay, so basically we have, blood sugar is still equally able to maintain itself, and you're more sensitive to adrenaline, which now has higher sensitivity to fat burning properties, and that's also beneficial on your metabolism and losing fat, of course, if that's your goal at the time. And as far as muscle building, okay, this is the other side of intermittent fasting, is that a lot of people know that it will, of course, stabilize your blood insulin and your blood sugar, which is better because it allows you to be more sensitive, more insulin sensitive when you are in the fed period, okay, when you're eating. In the feeding period, you're going to be more sensitive to uptaking nutrients, okay? That's what insulin sensitivity is. You want to be more insulin sensitive. Now, each of your cells has a different sensitivity to insulin, but overall, you can amplify the sensitivity of your pancreatic secretion of insulin on a macro level by fasting and doing ketogenic dieting. Think about it, okay? If your body releases insulin in response to food, but in higher proportions to carb, right? Highest proportion of insulin response is to carb, and you start creating longer distances of time in between meals, so in between insulin spikes, naturally your body's going to be more sensitive to it. The less you have something, the more sensitive you are to it. That is the way our body works, because our body is use it or lose it. If your body thinks it's in an area where it's not a famine, but there could be some scarcity of food, it's going to be concerned with surviving, and it will naturally upregulate its sensitivity to these anabolic processes, okay? So that is essentially that is the reason why you should start doing these intermittent fasting routines in the morning, or consider a ketogenic dieting switch, because that can allow for some of these muscle building properties. I'll add in one more thing too, is that when we're talking about boosting this insulin sensitivity and this sensitivity to these anabolic processes, when your insulin is low, basically you're dipping into the autophagy state, the autophagic state. And then when you start feeding again with large amounts of food, you're going to boost the mTOR response. mTOR is the main muscle building pathway in your body, okay? And when you're fasting and lowering that insulin and creating that larger period of time where you're in that catabolic state, so catabolic doesn't mean losing muscle, it just means breaking down, then your body's going to be more sensitive to the anabolic state, okay? This is why people who like the 1 meal a day approach find that it's very beneficial for building muscle, because they're increasing their sensitivity to many more of the anabolic pathways, let alone just the individual mechanisms like insulin sensitivity. Okay, they go hand in hand. And when you are basically implementing fasting more regularly, instead of feeding your body every 3 hours, your body's going to say, oh, okay, we can shut off these anabolic processes, and then that way, when they turn them back on, they're more sensitive. Okay, it's a logical approach that way, but you can look this up. It's very verifiable by research online. Oftentimes, I'm not throwing out a billion different studies everywhere in the videos because they're very dense with concepts. Okay, you can look these things up and verify them very easily, and I have other videos where I break down these concepts with studies. This is one that I want to hammer home the theory of. Okay, and the last thing I'll say is here's a tip on working out fasted, a tip that nobody else really throws at you, even the big fasting people on YouTube who I am fans of. Use electrolytes. Okay, sodium, potassium. You can throw in other forms of sodium like baking soda. You can throw in magnesium, but you have to be careful when supplementing with electrolytes, because when you supplement with one electrolyte, you can deplete the stores of another electrolyte. So I think the guy who's nailed it the most is Snake Diet on YouTube. If you ever looked up Cole Robinson, he's the guy who started the prolonged fasting, so multiple day fasting with electrolyte supplementation. And you're able to perform better, be less hungry, and it's very beneficial for your performance. But another thing that not many people know is that when you're low in salt and electrolytes, your body's going to jack up its insulin because it wants you to retain water, because it thinks it may be in a famine. Okay, so salt is necessary. Do not be afraid of salt. You need it to retain water, and when you're fasted and not consuming carbohydrates or food in general, you're going to be retaining less water. So you want to be supplementing with salt and electrolytes, but the easiest way to do it is through Cole Robinson's method, which is salt and potassium salt. That's it. In some water, sip it. There's other ways to do this. You can watch my video on electrolyte supplementation, keto raid, snake juice. You can look those things up, okay? But supplementing with electrolytes, here's the reason why you want to do it, is because you want to be sipping these electrolytes in the fasted state, because it will help you fill up with water, because you need water to perform, and it will prevent you from being hungry, and it will amplify fat loss because it's preventing your body from getting to a point where it has to artificially jack up its insulin. Insulin will prevent fat breakdown, and your body is only doing this because it wants you to hang on to water. Okay, so there you go. That's a huge tip that nobody will throw at you for fasting and fasted workouts. Sip on electrolytes. For intermittent fasting, it can make a big difference. For prolonged fasting, it will make a hell of a difference, and that is why, if you've ever seen Snake Diet, Cole Robinson, he just shouts at people to drink the snake juice all day long, the salt and potassium salt. You can add in other electrolytes, but the ones that seem to be best for performance are sodium chloride and potassium. I think he also throws in sodium bicarbonate, which is baking soda. So you can do that also. I've liked it in the past. Don't drink too much of it. It might make you have to run to the bathroom, so I always use a conservative dose of 1/4 teaspoon of each. Okay, that's my dose personally, in a big 2-liter thing of water, and then I sip it, but you don't want to down the whole thing. So that is the best video you'll get on fasted workouts on YouTube. Leave it a like, subscribe to me right now. Go to my website, romanoketo.com, for keto coaching, and hit me up with your questions in the comments. I will answer you. That's it. Let me know what you want to see. I want to make plenty more videos that deliver on these type of topics. I want to blend fasting, ketogenic dieting with bodybuilding and fitness and make it much more mainstream, because it deserves to be that way. It can change your life. Seriously. Thank you again. Anthony Romano. Peace.